Welcome back, everybody. It's Creative Redundancy back again. The one known as CR, like it says on your screen. And welcome to this interactive, fun, exploring, something I actually always do all the time mentally when I'm creating stuff. This is combination mode time! My special request by a lot of you folks. And you're probably wondering, for my newer viewers that haven't seen this, because I just realized I haven't done this type of stream for like over 2 years, apparently. Because the last time I did this was in 2022, on November 22nd of 2022. So it's been too long since I've done this, so I figure it's time to bring this back. Why not? Also, I mean two. Oh, look at it. I see you guys in the side chat. By the way, I do see you guys. Standard, let me know if you can hear me. Let's change that out. Let's change this out. So, read this, the description to find out more, but I'm actually trying to read this on the side. I have things set up for this. That is why it's taking a little bit longer to set this up. So this, I'm paraphrasing and reading my description right now, but the stream/replay is a fun exercise activity of taking random stuff and doing or making stuff with it. Now, I'm no expert in some of this stuff, like the survivalism, bushcrafting, making preparedness. I'm just one that puts that knowledge gained into something better, as many others do out there, to create something. So join me on this stream, and let's combine, build something together. And this is more hypothetical, although I will bring in stage props to supplement it, because, you know, visuals and stuff like that. Just like the visual you see on the screen right here. By the way, I made that. Specifically for this. You see, I specifically made this sequence, this video sequence for this. I figured make it more dramatic, right? Now, I do need channels to be in here to start this, because this is an interactive stream. It's you guys that make it happen, right? Because I know I've already been asked, I'm showing you where the list of items we're using to recreate something. Well, it's up to you guys, you folks out there. That's why it's interactive. I have no idea what you guys are going to mention. Hopefully I'll have something I can use as a stage prop or something like that, so you can have a visual and stuff like that. The rules are simple. Using only the items stated and only certain tools to create whatever you can. Hypothetically speaking, you know, I might not totally go all the way in with the creation, but hypothetically speaking, so. And let's think outside the box on this, right? That's the idea. It's a mental exercise, although in a fun, creative, CR kind of way. What are we creating? Well, who knows? Who knows what's gonna happen? Because every time I do this version of the live stream with combination mode, who knows what what will happen? Because you guys get to decide, right? You guys get to decide the items. Like pretty much every single, or whoever I specify gets to choose an item, right? It could be virtually anything. I'll try to bring in some stage photos so you can see. Yeah, we're using our imagination. Exactly, growing on Vancouver Island. Yes, please. Right? And that's why this is fun. Okay. So let me just slide this over here. Put this in the corner here. Bring my chat back up. The topic? Yeah, I mean, This is like one of those things like it's like improvisation, right? for or lack of a better, like if I coined the term or use a term that you guys can all use, all right, the thing called MacGyverism, right, right, because sometimes in life you're gonna improvise. You know, in preparedness you do plan for things and such, right? Yeah, plan as much as possible, but sometimes you gotta work with what you got. Use the resources that you got, the tools that you have on hand. You may not always have exactly what you want, exactly the tools you want. You know, you prepare for it the best you can, but at times you gotta work with what you have, with what's around you, and keep going, and use what you got. I mean, sorry, I don't have the wireless mic or whatever to use, so I'll try to project myself towards the camera, towards the mic, so you guys can hear me here. Because I can see the side chat here. Let me see. Yes, I can see the side chat, and I have slow-mo on for this, like usual. Although I can change that out if absolutely necessary to 2 or 3 seconds. If more or less showing, well, maybe not the show and tell part, but the improvisation part is gonna be in part of this, because in seeing, you know, for lack of a better word, a CR where characteristics of certain resources out there. So, you know, so it could be this random bottle cap that I'm just gonna put on the screen because it's next to me. Maybe it's a multi-tool that we're using as the tool for the round, for example. I'll be typing in the side chat so you'll see it. You know, maybe it's one of these utility knives that we're using as the tool. You know, maybe one of the items that we're using is this highlighter. This banana. This random spray bottle that I used the other day, for example. Maybe it's this reusable shopping type of bag that people use, for example. Maybe it's this rechargeable battery, for example. Once we go into this a little bit more and go for a round or two or practice round, I think more people will understand this, because I do realize that I have new people here that haven't seen this before. I know Puppy knows what I'm gonna do. Okay. Now, but let me say that. Well, okay, let's go for an example. Let's go for an example here. Let me just move the items to the side here. We'll go for example here. An example, right? We'll start practice round. Especially if I can type it down on the side chat. And hopefully I can actually type. That'd be nice too. Because I actually have a separate device running the for the side chat, so I can actually see it. Because I can't highlight via this app, so. And that way I can actually say what I need to say in there and do all that stuff. Alright, so right now we're gonna go, like I said, practice round. So one item from each channel. We'll go with what I got right now. Usually I prefer to have like 4 or 5 channels in here at least. And this could be anything. One item each from you folks. Well, ladies in this case. I'll try to bring in something, a stage prompt, to represent it the best I can. The best I can. So, you know, and the thing is, it doesn't have to be anything very specific, like, be like, oh yeah, and then bring this, survival knife or something like that. It does, or it doesn't have to be anything you might relate into survivalism or preparedness. You don't want to bring the road tiller. Oh, okay, a rotor tiller. Okay. Well, that's gonna be one of those things that I'm trying to understand. I don't have a rotor tiller, so although I've seen one, so like, well, I guess we'll see where we go with that. We'll see. Okay, but it could be. It doesn't have to be anything as specific, like later, for example, right? It could be a little bit more different, you know. And the thing is, the more different the item is, the more we gotta think outside the box. Because the idea is to only use the items stated during the round to actually create with. Like I said, this is how do I say this? It's testing your mind, the thinking outside the box a little, seeing things, seeing the characteristics of said item, whatever it is, right? Seeing what item and we're seeing how these things work, right? For example, like the lighter, right? It could be a non-functional one, and seeing these characteristics and these materials that make up these resources that we have. Because right now, I gotta put this back, but I'm not gonna bring a road tiller onto the screen here because it's not gonna fit on the table, even if I had one. So, let's see what you guys got. I will try to type it onto the screen so we can see what we have. So we'll just kind of go with what we got. Let's go with what we got right here. I'm trying to project my displays to the side, so I'm trying to talk towards my mic and type things in. So we got that rotor tiller. All right, and let's see. We got a twist tie from Puppy, and let's see. And just because Shawnee said that, we'll go with that mason jar. That t-shirt, if I can actually type it, that'd be nice too. And this egg crate, providing I can actually type. And of course, I gotta actually say it in, I gotta put it in the CR way. And providing I can actually type this. So I have this up on the screen right here. So, rotor, twist tie, mason jar, t-shirt. Okay, yeah. And egg cart. And just, hold on, I gotta grab something, hold on. Can't find that early. So, for the tool for this round, we'll go with a multi-tool. Very similar to something like this. I've misplaced my Gerber multi-tool at the moment. Alright, so with those items, rototiller, a twist tie, a mason jar, t-shirt, egg cart, and a multi-tool, what can you create with that? What can you do with just those resources? The other reason why I'm doing this, and the reason why I do this at all, is because some situations, people are like stranded on the side of the road. They've twisted their ankle, gone hiking, they're in the mountains or whatever, and they gotta make do with what they have. This is the reasoning for it, alright? This is just a way of making it more fun. Right, so we're gonna see what is possible with this, and you don't even have to use all the items or combine all the items, right? It's just to explore what is possible, seeing the characteristics, right? So, for example, the mason jar. Okay, I'm gonna use. I just happen to have a glass bottle or a glass jar right here. So, we'll kind of simulate this with this. Twist time. Okay, well, I don't quite have that twist time, but I got something that represents it, more or less. More or less. A t-shirt, well, I mean, I'm not gonna take the shirt off my back for it, but, we'll represent it with this right here. And stuffing like that. And the acorn, well, actually, I do have that. I randomly have something exciting. See, like, look at that. I actually have that. Look, I know you're probably like, whoa, yours actually got all the stuff except for the rotor. Yeah, well, the rotor is not to fit on the screen. So, the tool for this round, like I said, some sort of multi-tool, jar, type of container. That will represent the t-shirt, the acorn, and the twisty tip of tie right here. And just while you guys think about this, and as a practice round, right? What can you do with this stuff, right? Obviously, you see something like a glass container like this. It's a container. You can hold stuff in this, for example. I can put water in here, for example. It might not have any drain holes, but maybe I fill it up with some dirt that I find. Like I said, it doesn't always have to relate into survivalism or into the preparedness. This could relate into the gardening aspect, right? So, maybe I had some seeds, and this one I got some dirt or whatever. Maybe I'm sprouting some microgreens. Oh, see what I did there? I'll read that comment in a sec, Shiny. For example, sprout some microgreens and something like this. Since this is a glass container, right? I can hold. If you had access or to wax or later, for example, if it was part of it, make a candle as something like this. For example, let me see what Shiny wrote in here. I see you, Huga. Welcome, Huga. Cut the acorn into individual sections to serve as seed pods, using a mason jar to create a mini greenhouse to secure the mason jar with the lid. Yeah, twist cut to make sure it's tightly sealed, which helps maintain humidity for the seeds. Use the fabric from the t-shirt to create a small con covered. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about, right there. You totally got this, Shiny. And she actually used like almost all the items except for the rotiller. I mean, the rotiller, I'm trying to incorporate that in, right? This is exactly what it is, Shiny. That's awesome. And I guess it would help if I can actually spell right. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Awesome, Shiny. That's how it's done. That's how it's done. As easy as that, right? Now, obviously, it's like a fun experiment or whatever, right? Doing it, you still gotta do it, right? Obviously, I'm not actually doing it, but, just seeing the characteristics, right? For example, right? And then, Shawnee's just kind of considering, like, a gardening type of thing, too, at the moment, right? So she was saying, cut this, put this in here, start some seeds in it if you had something like that. Maybe these are the resources you found, and stuff like that. And making it work. Good job, Shawnee. Good job. You get a total thumbs up from CR right here. Straight up. Alright, now everyone else, What else do you guys got? This is a practice round, right? And the thing is, there's no right or wrong answers per se, right? Because we still, like I said, in theory, we would do this kind of deal. Obviously, we would do, in the real world, you're actually going to put things together, for example, right? The idea is to see things. Imagine how you would want to put these items, these resources together to make something out of, for example. It could be more crafty if you want, right? I know crafters out there that use different items or whatever, for example. Maybe for example, how can I see this? There might be there might be a way, actually, now that I think about it. Okay, I got the lid right here. I'll add the lid in, because it could be part of it. But, although I've never actually technically made charcoal in a glass container, technically, it's probably possible. We got a multi-tool here. Maybe I make some holes in this to allow that to come out, right? For example. Hey, maybe we're using this and we're gonna source a fire or use solar thermal energy to create some char. Not just char material, but maybe some biochar. Because technically biochar and char cloth and char punk wood are very, very, well, it's more or less the same. That basically with the absence of oxygen, for example. Alright, puppy. Yeah, okay, yeah, there we go. Create a small terrarium in the mason jar using a tiny plants, moss, and rocks, and then the rotor could be used to gather the soil or sand, while the twist tie and t-shirt could serve as decorative element. Yeah, see, and that's a little bit different. You're using the exact same items, too, right? Because the thing about resources is when you have a little bit more to work with, you can do a little bit more. But this is why I kind of limited down to like 5 items and like usually 1 tool for the round, just to make it more challenging, for example. Because also in the real world, you may have a little bit more to work with. But also in the real world, you may have limited amount of resources to use or even less gear to utilize. So this is why I do this. So, maybe I'm making like charcoal in this. I mean, I have boiled water in a glass container before. I remember that. It was like one of those drinking type ones. This ain't the same, but similar to something like this. This is actually the one I use here. But I've actually boiled water in a glass container just like that. Put it in a fire, and I had to use sticks to pull it out. Hi, Teresa. I see you in there. So I had to... What's that say? Alright. Teresa says... Let me see here. Well, before I say that, Shawnee said use the jar to clamp kitchen scraps to clean the shirt to collect the leaves till the brown and green with the rotor into the soil. Yeah, okay, there's another gardening type of application that could be possible. Let's see what Teresa said. It's not side. Maybe that means side of the road. Oh, side of the road water filter. Okay. I see. Pre-filtering, right? Yeah, I get that. Pre-filter with the t-shirt, use the drawer with the twist tie as a container. Obviously, the bigger the container, the more you're gonna get out of it. And such, and I need to plug in so you guys could see probably better. Sorry. I don't want it to be too bright, but whew, boy, that's bright. It's that time. Anyways, use the acorn, maybe possible to transport the water? No, I mean, something like this, the water is eventually gonna saturate through. It's not the biggest container, obviously, you know. However, there is egg cartons that are not cardboard either, so, you know, this is just a representation. Because I do know in other parts of the world, there's egg cartons that are not carton. Egg cartons that are not carton. Oh yeah, that makes sense here. No, egg cartons that are not cardboard, but this is what I have here as the example here. Yeah, of course. That's, of course, you know, this is not ideal, right? You know, in an ideal preparedness, planning and proactive situation, you know, you would want a little bit more to work with. Not ideal. Not ideal, right? Some of the stuff that we're putting together may not be ideal at times, right? But, like I said, the idea is to actually think about it. Like, when I see items, for example, like I said, this is just a practice round, but I see items, I see, you know, potential. What is possible, you know? For example, especially if you got the skill and knowledge and experience to back up this gear. And that's the important thing, right? Gear, resources may change at times, day to day, situation to situation, but those skills and knowledge and information kind of stick around with you. You know, for example, you know, I know some of the bushcrafters out there and people that the outdoor community, for example, you know, some primitive type of tool with this, right? I'm not actually gonna do this, but is it possible to make a tool out of this? You know, it is possible. Maybe make flint knapping, might be possible. You know, maybe your tool, for example, isn't really sharp, or you want to touch it back up. You know, you break glass, hopefully get a straight edge out of it for some way, and use that to kind of touch up your blade or the cutting edge on a multi-tool, or for example, in this scenario, this hypothetical type of situation. Let's disassemble the rotor and turn it into something. Oh, I love how Shawnee's just turning the gears and thinking about this. See how I just like added that in, by the way. I need sound effects like crickets. Maybe it would help, but this is the idea, right? You know, and maybe it's making something out of the glass, well, at the bottom of it, anyways. You know, is it possible? Yeah, you're gonna need some skill. You know, flint knapping is not the easiest thing. You know. That's a skill level I definitely don't have at times. And Shawnee gets a nice heart there for saying all that stuff. Yeah. For example. And yes, everyone, I gotta remember to put everything back after the fact, after all this is said and done. For example. But yeah, like, you know, and think about, like, in terms of sort of the survivalism part or preparedness part, think of ways that we can utilize this stuff for shelter materials, to make shelter, cover, you know, make water, to secure water, purify water, pre-filter water, gather the water, soil, and food related in some way, for example, right? Like I said, a glass container like this, you can do a lot with this, with skill and with a little luck. Obviously, it depends how much you got of the material, for example, right? Like I said, I boiled water in a glass container before. I've done this before, at least once, because I had to, because, yeah, at that time, that's what I used. You know, I had to use sticks to pull it out, you know? I was just like this. Okay, I gotta make sure I don't actually drop this. This is actually glass, but I'm like, the little bottle, the neck, I've secured it. I went like this, and I'm like, okay. I'm like, from the fire to the ground, and I'm like, 1, 2, 3, right? I did it, alright? And I didn't drop it. My friends were around me. They saw me doing that, and they're like, Sierra, are you boiling water in like a glass container? I'm like, yeah. Are you sure not to break it? I'm like, hey, better not. Because our friends gonna be mad that I broke a bottle right outside the fire pit, for example. Or fire pit. Well, well, it's not a fireplace, but a fire pit. Or an outside. If we were outside, this is like probably in the fall time, for example. Hey, I needed some hot water for that coffee that morning, okay? That's actually why I did it. One of the reasons why I did that. One of the reasons why I did that. So, let's go on with this. As I leave this on the screen here. So, let's go for another. Who wants another round? Who wants another round? That was the practice round. So, I really hope you guys are understanding that. Like I said, I wrote it, it's in the description. Although, I've read it out and so, but you can read the description and it says a little bit more details. You know, I swear, if I showed you guys what's around me, you'd be like, oh, Sierra's ready. It's like, yeah, because I had to bring the stage props in. But yeah, the rotiller, I'm like, you know, I would have to see one, and maybe randomly I'll watch a video about what it would be like, and we'll take a look at it. Because I know there's gears, a wheel in there, there's handles on that. You know, technically, for this example, you know, there's a multi-tool. It's like, people have disassembled stuff with multi-tools before, you know. It's not ideal, right? Because you're using a multi-tool. A multi-tool is good at doing a lot of things. However, a multi-tool may not do anything specifically great. Because, you know, you don't have the precision, you're not using a precision screwdriver or one that has a deeper shaft that you can, you know, get down to unscrew something. So some things, the multi-tool and that rotiller, if absolutely necessary, you know, you might not be able to disassemble. But is it possible? You might be, you know, with a little bit of time, and a little bit of effort, and a little bit of luck. Maybe. I don't know where that situation that you would have a rotiller in a survival situation, but maybe you're stuck on the side of the road and you randomly have it. Hey, who knows, sorry. Who knows? Time for another round! And it would help if I can actually spell and type right. This. Alright, it's time for round two. Round two! So once again, for the 5 people that I currently have in here, each channel in here, because I only have 5 anyways, you get to pick one item. And try to choose something different. You know, just different, right? And like I said, it doesn't have to be like what I've shown already. It doesn't have to be, like I said, it could be, hey, you know, you want to, you know, throw a monkey in the and into the mix, or in this case, banana. You can do that, right? You know, if necessary, I'll add an item in just into the mix. That's just a stage prop, by the way. That's probably something I'll have later. Hi, Richard. It's nice to see you, man. You get a virtual fist bump. Boom, boom. Because we got Bentley's Backwoods Bushcraft here. How are you doing? Tell Michelle I said hi. You know, I mean, Richard, you've been around with me on the channel for a while. You've seen that I've done this before, right? Thinking outside the box. Hey, Richard, remember the mesh? Remember that mesh video that I showed? I think you commented on that. That was back a long time ago, like 8 years ago, when I first started the channel. 2016, maybe 2017 at the latest, where I was showing what could you do with a mesh bag, for example, or a produce type of mesh bag, right? An item that, for the most part, right, people discard it after the fact, right? After it's used to, you know, put their onions, oranges, whatever into, right? You see it in the supermarket, in the produce aisle, for example, right? And yes, by the way, I have discovered some things that you can do with that. That might be for another video, another stream or a different video. Something I just kind of start to do. So you might see that randomly. So yeah, if you see that video and be like, yeah, see, I remember it. You were talking about this during a live stream and all that stuff. Yes. Aw, see, straight. Aw, you remember that, Richard? That's awesome, man. Aw, yeah, I still remember that. Of course, I remember that video too, right? You know, that's why I do. That's why I kind of brought this into the mix for that channel, because it's right up my alley. And not a lot of channels kind of do something like this. Maybe there may be some. Never seen any of them. But, and this is why it's a quote-unquote fun activity. Alright? It's just kind of putting things together, for example, right? Just seeing the potential of something. You know, it's kind of thinking outside the box, or in my case, thinking outside the box, that's outside the box, that's outside the room, that's outside the place, that's outside the house, that's outside the world. So yes. So we'll go. So yes, name some items. You want to go for another round? Name some items. So, because I only got one item right now. Well, maybe two at the most. Because I know Puppy already mentioned about what about an empty soda can or a non-functional flashlight, lol. Well, we'll go with that. We'll go with that. Like I said, this... I'm not naming the items. You guys get to choose. Because I'm actually having fun with this. This is actually why I like doing this too. Because I don't know what you guys are going to say. I gotta think outside the box with it too, right? And this is why this is interactive. And I want you guys to interact into the side chat with the items. Because it makes it more challenging that way, for example. It's not just this kind of, you know... Oh, Richard would know, you know. This... You know, we're not just gonna name off the 5 C's of survivability, you know. Like Dave Canterbury does, right? The cutting tool, the cordage, the combustion, all that stuff, right? You know, you want to add that in as your item, go ahead, right? But the idea is to think just beyond that kind of stuff. Or look at items to potentially make those type of items. Because those are items that are hard to reproduce in nature off the landscape. Relatively speaking, for example. You know, that jar container, like I said earlier, it is possible to flint-knap something like that. Possible, maybe not ideal, but it is possible. People have done it with beer bottle bottoms. Wow, that was just a mouthful right there. You know, where they basically fill it up with liquid and smash the top, and then the bottom flies out, right? And they use that with some sort of pressure flaking or whatever to make some sort of primitive type of cutting tool, arrow, you know, something that would point them into the right direction. You see what I did there? Yeah, see? Get my point? Well, Richard, this is round 2 of it. That's all. I just did a practice round. Like I said, you guys get to choose the item. It could be anything, like I said. You know, and trying to specify a little bit more as much as possible, right? And trying to kind of choose one item, more or less, you know. Like I said, it could be a highlighter. Maybe this roll of, I mean, there's a rechargeable battery. Bottle cap, right? I mean, some of the items are probably gonna be more difficult to use or put stuff together, right? And let's think about this in a logical way in terms of, like I said, you know, You're on the side, and as a real world example, you're on the side of the road. You know, people that have been on the side of the road, flat tire, vehicle not working right, they shelter in place, for example, right? And maybe they're missing something for whatever reason. You prepare as much as possible, but you're kind of taking inventory of what you have, for example. Because one of the things I've mentioned before on this channel is, and over what Westraup says it as, Survivor would say as the zone of assessment. Because on his videos, back on when he was doing the show Survivor Man more, he has this thing called the zone of assessment where he would see what's on him, right next to him, immediate area, and what's just beyond, the hill or whatever, right? And seeing what resources that he has on him. So, he'd be like, okay, what do I have on me? Okay, I got a multi-tool. Okay, I got a shirt on. I'm wearing a jacket. For example, like, there's 2 episodes that come to mind. The Norway two-part episode, where, and I do highly recommend watching that episode, the Norway episode. It seems to be the most popular one, by the way. You can actually watch it on the YouTube side. And he's mimicking this type of scenario, right? And he has a limited amount of gear, and maybe it's not. None of it was always ideal. For example, right? He had a jar of peanut butter with just a couple scoops left. For example, in his zone of assessment. Okay, well, I've got the vehicle. It doesn't run. For example, I'm running low on fuel, right? And stuff like that. He's got the seat covers, and looking at stuff like that, or the wiring in that said car. The car's not operational, and in a survival situation, you gotta use what you got, right? The seat covers he used in there, the seatbelt webbing. Seatbelt webbing can be strong type of, synthetic cordage, for example, and he used that in that episode too, right? It was like, when I see these shows, I'm always looking at like what resources are available. Like shows like, more like season 1 and 2 of Survival, but with Dave Canterbury and Cody Lundin, right? And they have the similar mentality. It's just like, okay, what do we have? What can we use? Right? What resources are possible around us that we can utilize to affect, in situations like that, affect survival, as they say. Now, like I said, it doesn't per se have to be related to survival. The previous example, Shawnee was showing examples of like a gardening thing, right? For example, I kind of came up with something too, and like I said, none of this except for the description is script, because you guys get to choose said items. All right. Anyways, let's see the chat. Alright, Shawnee said, if the flashlight has the lens or any glass component, you can kind it with reflective surface on a pop can. Hold it as to focus the light into kind of starting a fire. Yes! For example. That's the can-do spirit right there. And it just happens that I have something nearby. Stage props, right? Parabolic lens right here. I can... Well, I'm not going to open it, but there's a parabolic lens right there. So basically, and, a lot of those survival shows have shown this where, as I try not to drop it on the table that loud, have shown it with solar, using it for solar ignition, for example, right? I've shown solar ignition with many different parabolic-like shapes. I've shown it with a wok. I've shown it with a speaker. Everyone knows about the flashlight thing, but if you think about it, it's the characteristics of that parabolic lens or reflector that's important. The only difference is it's not a flashlight. It's a speaker. It's a wok. It's a. I think I have actually shown this with like a copper color type of thing. It just happened to be concave on the inside, reflective enough. A can thing? The can? I've shown solar ignition with a pop can before. I know Lestrade has shown that before too. In I forget what episode that was. He was in the desert. He used the chocolate, right? And you know, it's kind of funny. I've seen our channels do that, and they say it with chocolate, right? Well, I showed it with polishing it up with baking soda. Maybe you got that with you, right? Or some sort of abrasive agent to kind of polish up the bottom of a can, which I don't seem to have one nearby. Yeah, okay. I don't have one nearby. I would have to go get it or go out into my pop can collection to go get one. But everyone knows what a pop can looks like. It's very similar, right? It's got a concave bottom, and I've shown this before, right? So I have tried that before too. Now, Sean, the thing is about something like that, what Shiburu, well, right, they're about putting the flashlight lens on the top of the pop can and use it to make a solar oven to heat something. Now, the thing is, the only caveat is the size. I think, if you're doing that for solar ignition would probably be the way to go. Because also it's now solar oven because you don't have the size, for example, right? But I like how you're thinking there, right? Good. And apparently I'm impressing Puppy because she just wrote OMG wow, for example. But this is an idea, right? To look at it like that. See what items you have with you. Like look at, and let's remember here, and I want to say this straight up, like as a disclaimer, right? Do things at your own risk, blah blah, and all this stuff, right? This is just a fun exercise. Thinking about it is just in theory. It's totally different to do it in the real world, right? The idea is to see it like that, right? The potential. Look at like a vehicle, for example. Like if you were in a flood area or whatever, right? You're in a vehicle. You're stranded in a vehicle with flood water around it, right? The priority is to get out of, well, maybe not get out of the vehicle, but to get to safe ground. That's the idea, right? You don't get washed away. And maybe people are trying to help you out, for example. Let me get that out of the way. And, maybe for some reason, maybe you got that get home bag or whatever, but it's in the trunk. You don't have access to that gear because you can't get out of the vehicle to go get it. You don't have that back seat where you can access the trunk. Then what? Right? Yeah, it's nice to have all this fancy gear, this quote-unquote ideal gear, but sometimes in times, you don't have access to it because something prevents you from accessing it. A physical barrier or whatever. In this case, water. You can't access it because if you go out there, you're gonna get washed away, and then, yeah, it doesn't make it any better. For example. Take care, Richard. But that's the idea. That's the idea about this. So if you take anything from this at all, right? Regardless if you're participating right now, just listening, just chiming in on the backside, is to consider this stuff because, it may give you that ability to get out of said situation or to be able to use said items. Maybe in day-to-day you're able to reuse stuff, right? So you don't have to buy something per se. Maybe it's a more important situation where, you don't have access to certain resources, and you need to put these things together to make it work, right? Not ideal, but because like I said, this Norway episode that Les Stroud did on Survivor Man, right? I mean, he had, I think it was maybe, I'm trying to remember if it was shoes or winter boots, one of the two, right? But they weren't ideal for that situation for him. Because deep snow, for example, right? His feet were getting cold. He improvised using some sort of cutting tool he had with him. Maybe not quite like this, but like a multi-tool, like a Swiss Army knife or something like that. Utilizing and seeing characteristics that he can utilize. And he, realizing, I mean, for that situation, as he points out, he doesn't want to, quote unquote, cannibalize the vehicle, but his feet are more important than his vehicle. Think about that. Like, I'm actually almost quoting that. Because that's actually more or less what he said, right? My feet are more important than the vehicle, right? My life is more important than the vehicle, right? So, in that scenario, right? Maybe you're cutting the seatbelt, cutting the liner in the insulation. I mean, you're not gonna do this unless you get no other option, right? Don't get me wrong. I don't want to do anything like that too, but in that scenario, if no one's coming and you can only stay in that vehicle for so long, right? Yeah, that kind of stay with the vehicle, yeah, mentality, right? To a certain degree, but eventually you're gonna wear down the resources that you have. Any food, water you have, you're not gonna consume it, right? Then what? Right? So, you may have to make that judgment call and be like, I don't want to do this, but like I said, I love this vehicle, but my feet are more important than the vehicle. My life is more important than the vehicle, for example, in this case, right? And you could be with someone, right? What's more important? The vehicle or the kids with you? The vehicle or your feet? For example, right? And realizing that, prioritizing it and stuff like that. That's something important to understand at times, right? And seeing it like that. Because, there's potential out there. So, like I said, he would, I think he had some paracord or whatever, something. So he had some form of cordage. He was just like improvising, using the resources at that time for that situation. Where, far away from civilization, on the side of a road, kind of following that protocol, right? Stay with the vehicle, but realizing, okay, well, no one's coming. Maybe I'll see someone plow the snow or drive by, right? And hopefully it would happen, right? Maybe you do take a night or two or whatever to try that out, right? But what about after, right? Like I said, he had a little bit of food, a little bit of water with him, but those resources, those important resources, right? Food and water, they're dwindling. That current area is not to support him that much longer, and he kind of made that judgment call. First opportunity I get, ideal as possible to break in the wear on them, do something about it, right? Trying to make the situation better. And before that, kind of gathering up supplies, readying his feet in this case. He makes some sort of improvised moccasins with the insulation, the seat covers and all that stuff, using the wiring and probably the seatbelt webbing to kind of mix some sort of quote-unquote boot or insulated footwear. So keep that in mind. I mean, Let me get something. Providing I can actually find it. Hold on. Because I'll show an example right here, right? Like, even if I'm not doing this part of the fun part, the education part is still going to be part of it. Look. For anyone that hasn't seen this from me, this is all made from scraps. All made from scraps. All made from material that was discarded. Including the thread. Including this webbing. Including this. Right. I'm trying to remember if I found the key rings. But yeah. You know. And this was done by hand from me. I've shown this in the past. You know, it makes another appearance here. But this illustrates what I mean about using stuff. All these materials right here that I used for this, scrap material. Things that were abandoned in the environment out here, off the landscape. I brought these materials together, just like in combination mode right now, that more or less I'm doing, and brought them back into a use from what people may consider as a useless state, back into a useful state, as I've said before. And my tool was just pliers and a sewing needle. Even the thread, for the most part, reclaimed thread, which I've shown on the channel before. You know, I didn't use anything like a sewing machine for something like this. I did this by hand. You know, and you can see. And this reinforces what I say about bringing stuff together and how you... stuff like this, right? This is just stuff... I'm trying to remember where they came from, the materials. But... you know, because unfortunately... It's unfortunately... and it is happening at times... right? Illegal dumping, for example. One of my Canadian followers on the channel, I follow her too, right? She posted a shorts on the YouTube side saying how she's out, you know, finding birds or whatever in a natural area, right? And she just stumbles across all this quote-unquote trash on the ground, amongst some other things, right? And let's just say she was kind of ticked off about it. I'm like, yeah. And I told her, you know, I totally agree. It's total BS, right? You know? Like, I tried to look at some of the items more closely, right? I mean, just to see if there was any potential. That's how I am. I look at resources beyond randomness and be like, hey, you know what? There might be some potential in there, alright? There might be still some potential or some useful parts of said resource. I mean, I'm trying to remember the video, the shorts. It was, well, obviously really short and, you know, landscape and portrait, so I think I saw pieces of metal, pieces of sand, lots of plastic. There's probably styrofoam in there, you know, and stuff like that. And, you know, I'm trying to paraphrase what I said to them without looking it up, but it was just like, yeah. Because it kind of ruins it for everyone else, right? Because that's all you see is that if you went by that area. You know? And everything. It's just like... I mean, I guess it's the sign of the times at times, right? You know? Illegal dumping is a thing. I mean, and the thing is... it happens in many different countries. Not just here in Canada or in the US or whatever, right? It's because, you know, people don't want to pay to dump or whatever, right? Or something like that. Or, you know, they're just like, whatever, you know, and walk away from it. I mean, I've seen that before, too. I remember I was passing by a store, you know, this kid litters, even though the bin is like not even 5 feet, not even 4 feet away. This adult came up and said something to them, right? And I'm like, I kind of said something too, very, very briefly, but, and stuff like that. Because, and it's just kind of like, where are we going with that, right? You know what I mean? Because if everyone starts doing that more, what's going to happen? Alright? We're going to be walking around with crap everywhere. Instead of trying to, quote unquote, dispose of it nicely, or at least do something with it as much as possible. And it's just like, you know what I mean? I mean, it's one thing if the wind picks it up, the water picks up, okay, but that's one thing, right? But, people actually leaving it there, right? Like, looking in the hiking, even the bushcrafting community, you could probably agree with this. People that go hiking natural areas, right? There's a thing called leave no trace, right? you pack it in, you pack it out kind of deal, right? That kind of deal, right? Trying to leave this area, or like even people that go camping, right? Leave the area better than you found it. That kind of thing, for example, right? I mean, here's another example of this and I've shown this in the last camping video, and I'll mention this again. Actually, let me go get one of the items. Hold on, let me go get one of the items. And I'll show you guys right here in a moment here, but and the last time I went camping, and I've seen this every single time I go to this campground now because I go there more or less on a yearly basis. I missed 2020, 2021 for obvious reasons, like a lot of people missed a lot of stuff, but people would abandon the campsite, right? And I get it, you're trying to make it out on time or whatever, right? And this campsite, quote unquote, has pickup, right? But, I mean, it's one thing to leave something because, whatever, right? But it's totally different leaving really useful resources. Now, this is not what I found, but they'll illustrate this a little bit more. That's webbing material, right? Here's webbing material. Oh, by the way, I guess this is just going to be a random sneak peek on the resource hole. That's another reason why I do that series of videos. Alright? I know there in the preparedness community, there's the food halls, right? There's the anti-halls, there's this, our halls where people show what they bought, and then there's these anti-hauls of people showing things that they're not gonna buy. Well, I have a resource haul or free resource haul of items found for free, and a lot of time, and maybe not all the time, it's still useful to a certain degree. I mean, hold on. I have to go get it, but this is not exactly the same color. However, this is from the exact same campground, just a different year. Cordage. That red cordage you see on the screen right now, this right here. Look. This cordage I found at the campsite. It was abandoned by our campers. They left that campsite so bad. I was just like, and I did it as, for the resource, but you know, also to keep busy and just to see, right? Just curious, right? Some of this cordage was just, for example, just because they couldn't undo the knot, or couldn't be bothered to undo the knots. You know, I guess I understand people time restraints, they're rushing out from the campsite and stuff like that, right? But this is why, in my opinion, you learn how to. I'm trying to pull something out. Hold on. That's why you try for cordage, for example, right? So instead of having to actually do stuff, actually, Shawnee, I'm actually explaining this a lot more. This will be more of the theory and not the creation mode part, but this is the idea on why I see this all the time, right? I mean, I could go for like 2 hours talking about this, but yes, welcome back. Like I said, this is cordage I found at a campsite. Very similar cordage that I found earlier this year. This is not exactly the same cordage, but it's very similar. Here's an actual part of that. This actually came from this campsite that I went to this year. So if you go take a look at that video that my summer type of camp out, you will see parts of this in that video. But what I'm really trying to say is, it's because they're putting these hard knots in here in certain things, right? And it's not a quick deploy or whatever. I mean, quote unquote hard knots when I say granny knots, whatever you want to call that kind of stuff, right? They were rushing out, so they're cutting the cordage, right? And I just took the time, you know, it just took me an extra, let's say 15 minutes to undo that cordage. You know, I didn't even have per se tools on me to do that. You know, I wasn't even using pliers, you know, similar to something like this to undo it, for example, or an awl to undo it. I was just undoing it as much as I could, right? You know, some of those knots were like, I could not undo that. It's just simply too difficult. So, you know, I had to cut my losses on that as much as possible. But if you look at that video that I did earlier this year back in, well, technically it was July, but you didn't see it till August. You know, some of that cordage I had were like 7 feet, 6 feet. You know, some of them were short like this too, for example, but I was still able to, I can still utilize some of that cordage for certain little things. Because they didn't, you know, like I said, they were doing hard knots like something like this. Actually, let me bring my lighter out. I'm trying not to, like, I have white glare. Hold on. Sorry, my wall's over here. But let me change my focus here. Let me change the focus here so you guys can hopefully see this. Yeah. So, yeah, hard knots like this, I get it, right? But other times it was just like this long, and this was tied to like a tarp or whatever. I think it's because they were rushing out, for example, and I get that, you know. If you're abandoning a site because of a storm, yeah, you're rushing out. I've done that. I've had to do that before too. Like, don't get me wrong, right? You know, because obviously, you know, you're with people or whatever, with your family, that comes first, right? I get that. I understand that. But a lot of the time, when I've seen these air campers, right, they're leaving when it's still sunny out. It's not storming out or whatever. It's not windy out. They're just, you know, they just want to be on the road by like 10 a.m. or whatever, right? And I'm like, looking, I'm like, I just look, of course, because I can see them, right? I'm like, are they leaving behind, right? You know? Yes, at this campsite, they do have people that come by to pick up site pickup or site cleanup, right? But, you know, some of these items at times, I'm looking, I'm like, there's still potential in there. And yes, I get that these places have site pickup or whatever, but it does not necessarily mean that these items will still be reused anyways, right? Because these guys are getting paid. They might not even be like, they're just gonna throw, trash it or landfill it, right? And while, something like this, well, maybe not necessarily this size, but, 6-7 feet of cordage, especially some of this cordage, like this example, right? I took a look at it. I mean, I can't open it up because I've already sealed it. And it had inner strands inside. There was potential in there. I could use, for example, if I was making something, and this relates into the combination mode, why I'm doing this. I guess this is going to be more of the theory of it and why I do it in the first place, in addition to actually doing it and playing around with it. Is that maybe not necessarily this one. Like, let's say this was 2 feet, for example. Especially if it's got inner strands like paracord or whatever, I could easily reuse that for sewing projects. Like, if I was making said pouch, like I said earlier, I could be, I need some sewing thread or whatever. Oh yeah, I can use this. And the thing is, I'm not gonna be worried that or whatever, because I found this for free, the resource. So it doesn't matter to me if it didn't work or whatever. But the idea is that it could be useful, and reuse this stuff, kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Yes, convert with CR in it, and recover with a CR in it. These resources and put it back together into something, and seeing the potential of it, for example, right? Like, I'm not gonna cut this open, and I've already sealed the ends, like I said, but there is inner strands in there. You can see that the white part in there is inner strands in it. Even this has inner strands in it. I mean, like, look, here's a bracelet here, right? Zipper chains in it. When I was at our campsite, I'm bringing back the stuff. I'm like, it's because we could use this. Tie down our tires, reinforce our shelter components, right? For example, some things, I'm not gonna take back just for whatever the reason is. I took the more useful components out of things, right? Similar to the scrapping community. They recover materials, resources, more or less like e-waste, right? I'm talking about copper, steel, aluminum, right? And stuff like that. And of course, they try to recover gold and silver, platinum, all these metals, for example, right? Because if you look at it like that, it's just like they're doing the exact same thing. It's just a different material. It's not cordage, it's just metal, for example. Something to keep in mind. Like, I know that people have used, back to the egg carton. I know people have used egg cartons for a fire starter before, right? For example, they have something like this. They put dryer lint in. They put the wax in there. They cut it into squares, and they make a fire starter, right? Single use of reusing. However, it gets one more life out of it, one more use out of it, for example. And if you're using that in an emergency situation, you'll be like, well, that's worth everything, right? For example, start your campfire, start your fireplace with, or whatever, that kind of thing, right? Something to keep in mind. Yeah, this bracelet right here. See? All this is reclaimed items. Because this would have been in a landfill. I'm pretty sure I don't know if the people that would do the site pickup for at that campsite would actually reused it, right? Right? And the thing is, something like these resources, for example, you know, I'm not, shout out to preparedness veteran here. If you if people actually watch this, you know, and saw this part, shout out to him. Because one of the things he said, right, in certain situations, nothing's disposable. Nothing's single use, right? As much as possible. Because the resources give you that edge. Obviously the skill, knowledge, and experience is important, don't get me wrong, but the physical resources, right? Because it's hard to reproduce cordage off the landscape at times. Like, even for me, I've tried it, but in the winter, that might be a little bit difficult, because the ground's frozen. I can't access the roots, but, oh, hey, I have some cordage. Yeah, this is going to be more useful, right? And for people out there, in preparedness at times, the gear as a whole costs something. The resources cost something. So being able to get some resources off the landscape, not necessarily always natural materials, but maybe just, recovering the resources, right? Allows you to be like, hey, now I got something. For example, I can put this in a backpack, for example. I can everyday carry it if I really wanted to. And all this took was being able to find it and a little bit of skill in terms of knowledge on how to braid. I mean, a zipper chain in it isn't that difficult. You can, you want to be fancy, do these air braids, or a cobra weave braid, whatever, right? Or a Solomon bar or whatever, right? I just do a zipper chain in it, usually just for the quick deployment of it. As much as possible, because that's what I do. That's why it doesn't look that clean. I never cut the remainder part of it, so you could see this, right? If you were more inclined, you can cut it if you want. I don't usually, because if I'm gonna be dipping into something like this, I want the whole amount, and I'm less worried about the aesthetics. I just need something that'll function. For example, like, I could deploy this out or whatever. Oh, and well, I can't show it, but there's something else I found too. This little power block, you plug into an outlet. Yeah. By the way, I found one. Because it was left behind, in a parking lot, I was just like, if anything, I'll pick it up so it doesn't, get ran over or whatever, right? All these pieces of plastic everywhere, right? But it still works. So, yeah, I'm going to use it. And I've had it for, the last, 4 or 5 years, for example. Showing something else, because this is actually the USB cable I'm using to charge the device right now to maintain the charge on this. Me and my friend found this. If he's watching this, he knows this, because we found it together. All right, and the thing is, I was just meeting with my friend, real random, and something like that. We just happened to find it. Someone must have dropped it, right? It still works. Oh, by the way, this, it glows in the dark, right? If anything, right? At first, I'm like, oh, if it works, right? If not, then maybe I'll scrap it to tie something with, right? But it still works, for example, right? Instead of it being, blowing in the wind, end up on the road, vehicles run over it, and then it's gonna be useless, because it's gonna be broken. And then what, right? Then its primary function isn't there anymore, I feel bad for the guy that lost it. I think we knew who it was, but they were biking or whatever. We were walking, so there's no way we're gonna catch up to them. We don't know. We can't find them. It's just how it is, right? I wanted to, but I'm like, it's probably from the bicyclist we saw, right? Yeah, he's probably long gone. We're not gonna be able to find him. And we're assuming it was from this person, right? It couldn't even be. And it's just like, yeah, so. My friend, when we got back to his vehicle, it's like I plug it in and it's just like, and my buddy's like, yeah, it works, man. I'm like, yeah, sweet, right? Because it allows me to reallocate the funds towards something else because I don't actually necessarily per se need to buy a cable, or at least at the moment. You know what I mean? And how does this all randomly like connect into the combination mode? Like, it's because again, combination mode is about the randomness, seeing the potential and stuff, right? Like, when I originally saw this cordage, I'm like, that kind of looks like paracord, and I'm looking inside because I had to cut it, parts of it, right? It's like, yeah, it's got inner strands, I could use this. Obviously, I made a bracelet out of it, for example. But I'm like, oh, yeah, it's got inner strands. I could use them for sewing projects or whatever, right? I mean, I could give this to someone and not feel bad about it because, you know what? I recovered it. And it's still useful. I mean, a lot of this cordage I find at this campsite when we go, I swear they bought it for that one trip. Right? That spool that they get from some hardware store, whatever. Well, in this case, it's probably CT here in Canada, but for example, right? And sometimes I can see them, right? Because also at my campsite, I can actually see what they're doing. They're not that far away, They're probably, let's say, quote unquote, a block away. All right, I can actually physically see it, right? And I know they're tying something. Tying down their tarp, tying down their shelter components while camping. I get that, right? That comes back to the camping preparedness side, but, this is what I would call leaving no trace, right? And not leaving it behind. Because it's how I am. Right? So, when you see certain little things, there's reasons why I do it, right? As much as possible, right? And, if absolutely necessary, I can, if I gave this to someone, handed this out, gave this to someone without a permanent residence or whatever, right? Someone, that needed resource, I don't feel so bad. Because I can spare the resource. It's not going to be one of those things that, it's not my own personal stash of it, right? I've got my own cordage I can use, my own personal stash of it, right? But something like this, if I don't have it or I'm not using it or whatever, and I can spare it, yeah. And I just realized I actually have one of them on. I actually have one of them on. This is actually one of the ones I found. Right? And yes, and by the way, I am using this one. Right? I am definitely using this one. You can see the top line hitch in there. I mean top line hitch. Yeah, the top line hitch. Right? What I call the reusable zip tie of the cordage world, right? Because I think if you had knowledge on how to make quick deploy, quick release, for example, like how I showed in that video. Sorry, I thought I heard something. In that video about, here's some, how do I say this? Cordage, anchor, tying it around. Well, first there was along the tarp side there was I think I put the tumble hitch in there. Yeah, quick release tumble hitch around the quote unquote peg. Make the trucker's hitch and use the Fairmont friction hitch as a quick release, right? trucker hitch gives you that 2-to-1 mechanical advantage like a pulley, right? And the pheromone friction hitch, which I'm really going to learn how to do that, right? That knowledge was like so useful because I applied it again, right? I applied it in that situation. It was nice. Because when we were dismantling camp, all I had to do was just undo the quick release the pheromone friction hitch, kind of undo that part of the trucker's hitch, and be like, oh, here's that quick release part of it, you know. And next thing you know, boom, it's done. It's done already, right? And I was able to adjust the tension on that even while while I was still using it, so it was able to adjust it, reuse it, didn't have to cut the line at all, which also means something like, well, not necessarily this, but that means, hey, I can use that again on the following camp out trip. Instead of, how do I say this, spending, let's just say, $20 on buying cordage and, you know, let's say it's 50 feet and you only were able to recover half of it. If you're going camping all the time and you're doing it again, alright, maybe some of these people, it's just a one-off, right? Okay. But if you're doing this again, or you do it again, you go out camping again, alright, or you don't really keep buying $20 worth of cordage and only bringing back half of it all the time, because eventually that will cut into, you're going to start, you're allocating so much into it that, you know, and stuff like that. Hence, something as more simplistic as learning how to tie knots, quick release, being able to, and stuff like that. Well, in theory, it could actually save you money. Because you're not repeatedly buying this cordage again that really you only used once on that campout trip. Right? You know, it's totally different if you use the cordage for 4 or 5, 6 years, whatever. Yeah, it starts to wear down. Okay, that's one thing, but I mean, like, I'm pretty sure the cordage is not just gonna wear down in one use. On a camp out that really only saw a little bit of wind or whatever, right? A little bit of UV light, a little bit of moisture or whatever. In my opinion. Where am I at? So, that... Anyways, that was almost like a rant, but I do want you guys to be aware of that. Perhaps I will shoot another video about this. It's just something I always keep in mind now. As much as possible. Yes, randomly. Yeah. And seeing the potential of it. So when, at times, you know, and another thing is, I should say, is something like this, for example. Something like this. I showed this earlier. If that's not 100% con, that's synthetic. But if that was con, my next camp out or whatever, I got a campfire or outdoor barbecue pit, you know, roasting marshmallows, whatever that kind of thing is. Like, if this was natural material, something I found, oh, I can make that into char cloth. I'm not gonna be like, oh, I don't want to cut out my shirt. I'll be like, oh, this is just something I found. I could spare the resource for it. Because, you know, basically if I didn't pick it up or use it, well, it would have been, quote unquote, rotting in the environment anyway. So basically I'm giving it more use out of it, getting a little more out of the resources for it, and going with it. Yeah, I don't know. Actually, I'm almost concerned. Maybe it is. I don't know. I would have to double check, but. Because, you know, this is how I am and seeing things and reusing things, right? Because unfortunately, and I've mentioned this to some other channels at times, right? And I've said this, I'm kind of quoting what I said in their comment section as my comment or reply, like comment on their video, for example, right? I may not have certain items, gear, resources, for example, but I will use what I do have available the best I can, using what I have, right? I'm trying to apply this and all that stuff. You want me to do more, Shadi? Hair tie, a sock, a wrap. I mean, we can mentally do this in terms of like hair tie, a sock, a wrapper, and a raw makeshift stress ball. Yeah, and kind of seeing it like that. For example, because like one of the things I've started to say this year a little bit is, and I've mentioned this one on some of the channels, is that if you can't buy something, you're going to have to find it or make it. It's as simple as that. And unfortunately, not everyone can always buy your way. You can't always buy your way out. Alright? Hell, you might not even be able to go somewhere or be able to do that. So you'll actually have to find it or make it back old school again, right? Using the resources that you do have as much as possible. And this is like the core principle reasoning why I brought combination mode in. Because it's a fun exercise, but in reality, this is the kind of thing I'm mentally doing all the time. Just taking a look and seeing potential and stuff, right? Or people, they see something like that, they'll be like, well, whatever. But I'll walk away from it, right? I see potential in it. You know what I see? I see HDPE, because it's actually a lid. And then, yes, I have actually made stuff with this kind of stuff before. Reused it. Put it, use the tool to kind of make something out of it. And I have. I know I have. I've actually gave one, because I made it into something, and I gave it to one of my friends. They were like, oh, hey, Sierra, that's so cool. And that was just using, quote unquote offcuts, for example, right? And just going with that. And reusing it as much as possible to make something with something else that my friend also gave to me, because his friend gave it to him because he had so much extra of said material, and with a little help from him and some tools, converted it back into something useful again. And not only that, it's an item that is possible that you can put in like some sort of go bag or maybe not necessarily get home bag, like a bug out bag or something like that, or emergency or a hiking type of bag or a camping type of scenario bag or whatever, right? So if you think about it like that, that just means, oh, hey, now I got some sort of tool option there. In the meantime, right? I didn't have to buy something necessary. I had to invest some time, some energy, some tools into it in terms of making it, but I didn't have to invest the capital into it, the money into it necessarily right away. Which in turn, I can reallocate the funds towards something that's much more difficult that I cannot make or find. For example, this ain't actually the example, because I'm using this for something else, but it could be water. This is actually rainwater. I'm actually using this, but that's the idea, right? Reallocating those funds towards something else. Something like food, water, maybe some, if you're a content creator out there, right? Maybe it's making something so until you can actually buy that rig or whatever, right? I mean, I can't show you the phone stand I'm using, but it's one of those things that you screw down. actually found it. It was abandoned. And as a content creator, I'm like, I could see the potential in it. It was one of those ring lights, right? It didn't have the the power supply for it, but it had the phone stand, that you connect to your smartphone. For example, like, I'll go get it. Hold on. Here's an item right here. This was found. This was abandoned. Right here. Look. I'm using the phone stand right now for it, but look. Something like this, right? As a content creator, I'd be like, hey, those phone stands, or whatever that you would use to clip your phone onto, to your tripod or selfie stick or whatever, yeah. I'm like, oh yeah, I could use the spare one. I don't have to, quote unquote, buy one. I found one. And just happens that supposedly it's a ring light. I don't know how much. Yeah, see, you can see. It does actually work, however, look. Here's another connection right here, right? I just happen to actually have the power supply for it. Yeah, see? Wait. To match the voltage and the polarity for this, right? Like, look at this. One of these 10-inch ring lights, right? My color, it's actually yellow and white. For example, right? When I saw it, I'm like, oh, okay, I can make that work, right? Because I saw it, I'm like, it works still, right? And probably, what probably happened is that it got abandoned because they bought a new one, right? But I'm like, you know what? I could still use the mount on it. For example. And I gotta remember to actually put it away after, among some other things here. Aww. That's very nice of you, puppy. I see that comment right there. Aw, that's very nice of you. I appreciate it. That's very encouraging. I appreciate that, puppy. I like that. Like I say, it's people like you, puppy, that kind of keep me going. I appreciate that encouragement of it. For example, because when I was growing up, as a I know this is supposed to be combination mode, but I guess it's more like behind the scenes of it. I didn't really do the combination mode as much as I would like, again. But, I didn't always have the money in the past. And stuff like that. The kind of toys I had at times. Yeah, I had some toys, some good toys or whatever. But, some of the toys I had were made from paper. I had paper origami toys, by the way. I had to make that work, right? Hand-me-downs, as they say. And stuff, secondhand and stuff like that. So I had to make things work. And as I grew older now, once I started working or whatever, I was able to get stuff. Hey, don't get me wrong, right? Don't get me wrong, I did. Alright? But as I've been growing older, I realized, I'm dipping back into my roots on it a lot more. Because, just cause. And stuff like that. As much as possible. Because it just, This is why certain little things are not on the channel anymore, or at least very seldomly. Because one of the things I started to do on the channel is bring back the creation part of it. Bring back the resources. Like, literally and figuratively and all that. And all that stuff as much as possible. Because I realized, I'm like, yeah. Because, it's not who you are. It's the things you do that really define who you are. Alright? As such, I want the channel to be more defined by what I make and reuse than what I buy. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, also I still buy some things. It's just the way it is, right? I can't recreate everything, find everything, buy it. So I do have to buy. But I want the channel to be more about what I just said. Which just slipped my mind, the words. But you know what I mean? Hold on, I just have a sip of coffee here. You know, a lot of my friends have seen, you know, they're like, wow, Sierra, you really do able to find things at times. I'm like, yeah, I just keep aware of my surroundings. Just take a look, right? You know, I'm not going to always be able to reuse everything. Just like how I say you can't help everyone out there, but you can help someone out there. In that same way, I can't reuse everything, but I can reuse some things out there. Like I said, cordage that I might find, right? Abandoned, for example, earthing. I mean, if you look at the resource holes, it's one of those things for me now. And yes, I'm working on that resource hole video. Oh, once I start recording it, actually, I need to actually do it. Because I need to actually allocate those items specifically to somewhere. But it just allows me, you know, if I wanted to, like, let's say, help someone out, I can be like, I could just, you know, I got some spare cordage I can use. Or what, something along the lines of that. And, you know, if I don't get it back, it's okay. I'll be like, oh, you know what? I found it. I got some use out of it. Now it's helping someone else out. You know, I'm not gonna feel so bad. I'm not gonna, I'll be able to cut that loss, right? You know, it's not like I actually bought it with my own money and then I'm giving it back away. This is just something that I kind of brought back into that circular thing with a CR in it. Circular with 2 CRs, actually. I think that's why I like that word. Because it's got 2 CRs in it. Just like, you know, our words, like scissors, right? Just to cut in some CR words in it and cover that, you know? And tie it all together like some cordage. Alright, and just go from there. Because it just, to me, yeah. That's what symbolizes creative redundancy. Where am I at? So yeah, I'll probably go for a little bit longer and then I'll cut it. So I appreciate everyone hearing me out on this one. As much as possible. And joining me for a shorter version of combination mode, a little bit more fun, and the behind the scenes of it, as they say. Alright? And why I named it this in the first place. Let me just overlay this all over on the top of my screen here. Turn the camera off now for a brief moment here. There we go. Because I actually need to pull my phone away from the mount that I have. See, I'm actually unscrewing the mount right now. I mean, no word of a lie here. This is the mount. I see. Get a little bit more out of the resources. You know. Not sure why it not said weak network connection there. Yeah, whatever. It says on my screen, transmission is unstable due to weak network condition, even though I'm not that far away from my router. You know? And I've added some other things to this. You know? An item, something like this would cost, like, let's just say $9, $10, whatever the price. An item like that, because I need one, or want one, I can reallocate it to go buy some that longer and just go from there. You know, in this ring weight, well, I don't use it that much, but it was part of it. You know, I'll try to reuse it. Try. I mean, I have used it. I probably could have actually used it for the stream, but I use another light source I traditionally use in this area. So everyone, thank you for dropping by, keeping me company, and hearing me out, and seeing a few sneak peeks on some items for later on for the channel. And if you're wondering why you're hearing sounds, it's because I gotta put all the resources back away again. I brought these out specifically for the stream. And come on, hang back up. Oh, don't drop anything on, alright? As much as possible. Because another reason why I do this now is because I see people out there. The people out there, right? You know, this is, I didn't really mean this to be like more like a prepping type of stream. And because the people out there, right? There's people out there with less. People with less out there. People with the quote unquote what they say, the have-nots, right? Yeah, there's people out there that have, but you know, realizing that there's people out there that don't have certain things or don't have access to it, right? So being able to get some of these resources back into a useful state, and maybe in the hands, you know, maybe I could spare, maybe I get extra cordage, I can spare it, right? And spare it to some people that could actually use it. Said resource. For example, the cordage, for example, right? And maybe, you know, depending who it is or whatever, maybe you show them, you know, a couple of knots and hitches that they can use right? So it's not just receiving gear, but spreading that knowledge, that skill of it, and showing them metaphorically, literally, and punnily, is punnily a word? Okay, I'm using the word punnily to tie things together, alright? So it's not just, you know, these people would like water and food, don't get me wrong, or whatever, or coffee, right? But sometimes it's just these other things too where, you know, just connecting or tying their belongings together, right? Because, you know, I know in that community, visiting someone else, I ran into some people in an alley during an afternoon. They were having issues with their cart, with their bungee cable, right? And I helped them out. You know, I didn't ask for anything in return. Actually, they actually said, "Do you want the bottles?" I'm like, "No. I did this for that's a sign of good faith, good faith, not fate, good faith, right?" Help them out, right? Because, you know, I could see they were struggling on trying to pull the bungee cable tight enough to secure their belongings, right? And I gave them a hand, right? You know, I didn't actually have the extra cordage with me, but if I did, I probably would have offered some if I had it, right? And stuff like that. Just to show something more. And not, you know, not just kind of walk by, right? Because it's one of the things I can't, you know, especially as time goes on and I see things, you experience it indirectly or indirectly, or I know people that go through it, right? And it, to me, I want to do it, alright? Just show something more. Do something awesome. And, you know, if anything, if you take anything away from this stream, right, is think outside the box, right? trying to put the resources back into a useful state the best that you can for what it is. I get it, right? Resources take up room, whatever. I get all that stuff, right? As much as possible, right? Because when there's resources available and the skill, knowledge, and experience in there, wow, there's potential. There's options. When resources, skill, knowledge, and experience are limited, very minimal, very limited on the options. But when you have options, there's still options on the table. There's still hope on the table because there's still potential. There's still another option. There's still another plan B, plan C in this case, right? Contingency to go with the alternative and primary, for example. Maybe do this if you want because you want to save some money. Reallocate some money. Maybe help some people out as best as you can. And, be prepared out there. I'm not remote. Is there a combination mode off the screen here? Be prepared. And there we go. I seem to have transmission error or whatever. I know, as I close this out and with a CR, this is our world, right? Our world. I say our world, I mean our world. Not just mine, not just yours. Ours. This is, right? We all are here. We are here. Generally speaking, unless you're in space or on the ISS. But generally speaking, right? We're here. This is our world. Just like the example I said about that shorts I said from one of my Canadian followers that I follow and stuff like that, I mean, they had choice words as it, and I'm like, I get it, right? I kind of said a few choice words myself. I get it. I see it to myself at times. So everyone go out there and do something awesome because it matters. And as our world changes, we're going to do something to get better with those skills, that skill and knowledge by applying it and getting some experience. And sorry, I have to let it play again. And go help someone out if you can. I get it, you can't help everyone out there, but try to do something positive out there. Reroute that negative energy into something positive. And combine these things together. Combine the resources. Combine the skill. Combine the knowledge. Combine the experience, right? Bring these things together, and just like in combination mode, and maybe, just maybe, you'll be able to make something wonderful. And with that, I'll catch you all on the next video / live stream. Take care, everyone. Later.